because I think this is something that's worth talking about. I think that when we talk about ancient Nubia a lot, we are talking about things that are generalizations, things that are handed down to us in a biased way, really. Really it's a lot of times in a racist way. It's handed down to us, and we really don't give the people from ancient Nubia their due. So I want to talk about that today. So I hope that you are doing well. God bless you. I'll ask you up front that you would like this. Please subscribe to my channel. Tell somebody about it. Let's get this information out. I'll be trying to come to you regular times to go live and talk about ancient Kemet, ancient Nubia. Just share this with somebody. I ask that you would share this with somebody or find a way to support me. Look at my books on Amazon, Danita Smith on Amazon. You find stories about Black history. They can't pull us up. A story about Harriet Tubman and her life. And so many other things, 10 things your child should know about reading, writing, and math. That's all on Amazon. You can look me up on there. So I ask that you'll take a look at that and support in some way. But let's get started. Let's talk about ancient Nubia, because ancient Nubia is, I think, a great place. I am fascinated with ancient Nubia. I'm fascinated with all that's there in ancient Kush and Yam and the Wawat and the Urju and that whole area and that whole place. And I love talking about it because it's so rich and there's so much we just don't know. And there's probably a lot more in history that has to do with that place that we just don't know about. So we're going to jump into that and get started because it's such, I believe, a rich time in history and a rich part of history. So what is Nubia? When we think about Nubia, we talk about Nubia. What is Nubia? So we're going to go back to this timeline that I have that I'm building that I'll be showing you. We'll get the timeline. We'll talk about a couple of things here. So where is Nubia and what is Nubia? Like, that's a good thing to start out and talk about, right? Because we start to think about, it's a good idea to have this map here, so that you can get a look, see right here on the screen, and you can take a look at where is Nubia, right? So first of all, when we think about Nubia, one of the first things to think about to jump out at you is that we're talking about a geographical region. The reason in which we talk about it now, it's a region. It's not necessarily, although there are Nubian people here, there's still Nubian people alive, there's still Nubian people, there in that part of the world. But the way we use the word Nubia today, we're referring to a region. And the way we kind of use it historically is referring to a region. So where is Nubia? So Nubia, if you take a look at this map here, you have the southern part of the Nile Valley, or this part of the Nile Valley is Upper Nubia, and that's the southern part. And then you go farther north, you have Lower Nubia, just like you have Upper Nubia here in the south and Upper Egypt here in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. So Nubia is really a geographical area. It's a geographical region, and it's really talking about the areas that are really right around the Nile River, right? You have people that are going out here farther west towards the Horn of Africa. We know that Punt was south and east and places south and east and places west. You have people all around there. But when you think about ancient Nubia, you're talking about a region, right? So a lot of times when people think about it and they say Nubia, they're not really distinguishing with respect to the different people who live there. They're not really talking about or really even making reference to the different groups of people who live there. And when the ancient Kemetic people talked about them, a lot of times they talked about the differences. They talked about people. When you go back and actually read some of the actual documents. So I was reading some of the documents in ancient Kemet because we know a lot about Nubia. We know a lot about Nubia from graves, from how they buried their people, what they kept in the graves, different artifacts that they made. We know a lot about them from what ancient Kemet said as well. So we don't know a lot about them in terms of what they say for themselves. We know what other people say about them, and we know how they left a record of themselves. And when you read some of the documentation, like the first time the word Kush was used in Kemetic writing was around 2000 BC, and they didn't just mention Kush. They mentioned a whole series of people that were coming from the south of them. They were part of a coalition to try to fight off Kemet as they were kind of moving forward, which we'll talk about a little bit. But a lot of times when you see them mention quote unquote Nubians, they're talking about different types of people and different groups, different societies. So different people grew up, different people developed different, organizations, different coalitions, and they developed in their own societies, and they had distinct names, just like you do here, right? Just like we have names, we have areas, we have states, you have Native American people who have different distinctions, you have people all over the world who have different distinctions in terms of who they are. They were different people. And so it wasn't like they were all lumped into a basket the way we like to lump them to a basket. So first thing to think about is that we're talking about a region, a geographical region, and that there are many different types of people within that region. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's kind of go back in time. So we talked about a little bit yesterday how ancient Kemet started around 3100 BC. So when ancient Kemet started, it was really the joining of Upper Kemet and Lower Kemet and made it into one land. Well, before that, obviously people were still in the Nile Valley. People were in the Nile Valley thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. We know that human beings were in the Nile Valley for hundreds of thousands of years, and obviously in this area of Africa, general area, for millions of years, our ancestors were there. So this is not like a new thing, people being in the Nile Valley and people from all parts of Africa, right? So when we go kind of drill down to this area, you can go back hundreds of thousands of years and find human activity in the Nile Valley, Homo sapiens like you and I, right? But if we kind of narrow this down to about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, we go before ancient Kemet, before Kemet becomes a land in 3100 BC. There are things going on, and so it's important to look at and see. We can go back 400 or 500 years, 600, 700, 800 years even before that, and find artifacts that they've found in the area of the Nile Valley with respect to Nubian people, specifically Nubian people. And a lot of the area and activity that takes place within ancient Kemet, prior to Kemet becoming a country, prior to 3100 BC, I'm talking 3800 BC, 3300 BC, anywhere prior to that, you find a lot of activity in the southern part of Kemet. When you think about Nakada, you think about Netken, you think about Abydos, you think about some of the older areas that are just north of Aswan. There's a lot of archaeological activity going on in 3800 BC that's dated to 3500 BC, 3800 BC. And they talk a lot about people who are the predecessors of the ancient Kemetic people, which obviously a lot of people are, but you also find other people, other distinct groups of people that I want to give you names to it that we can talk about, that obviously mixed, that obviously were there for a period of time, that we should talk about. So one of the groups of people that have been identified by archaeologists they call the A group, and they call them the A group Nubians. So if you get a chance to jot this down or write it down or just read more about them, there's a lot of studies with respect to them. There's a guy named George Reisner who was an archaeologist. He says some racist things, so we don't go by everything he says, but he was one of the persons who helped to develop the naming of this group as the A group and did a lot of archaeological studies well over 100 years ago there in Northern Africa. So the A group is a group of Nubian ancestors, Nubian people who lived around 3800 to 3100 BC. And I'll kind of make this bigger so you can see it. They lived around 3800 to 3100 BC. And the interesting part about it, one of the things that strikes me with respect to it, you can see that the range for the A group. So, while they may or may not have been large groups of people, they may have been relatively, minute groups of people, but you see a range of A group activity stretching into what is southern Egypt, southern Kemet, going all the way down to about the Second Cataract into what is today northern Sudan. Why is that interesting to me? That's interesting because the traditional boundaries of ancient Kemet are right around here in the First Cataract. So if you look right around here in the First Cataract, that's the traditional southern boundary of ancient Kemet. So if you just stop and think about it for a second, you go back, 3100 BC, 5,100 years, more than 5,000 years ago, and you think about this area of the world and you say this is the boundary, there's nothing stopping people who we want to call the first Kemetic people and people who we want to call Nubian people who are forming a different society. There's nothing stopping them from interacting. There's no bridge, there's no force field. And you and I both know, and as human beings do, when people interact, they interact in all kinds of ways. They interact relationship wise, they have intercourse, they have all types of relationships, they interact economically, they share religious values, they share all kinds of, they fight, right? A lot of times people just want to characterize ancient Kemetic people as fighting Nubian people. And it's just not that, just not the reality. It's not that simple. The same type of relationships and interactions that you and I have today and people have today, they had back then. I mean, it's not like they weren't people, right? They had all kinds of interactions. And what you notice about the A group people, so if you get a chance to read them, you'll find information about them at the MFA at Harvard's Museum of Fine Arts. You'll find information about them at the University of Chicago, just giving you some areas where you can read up more about them and look at some of the documentation around them, because those are two major sets of archaeologists and scientists that studied this area, right? So George Reisner with Boston and Harvard and folks in the University of Chicago did a lot of research with respect to Nubia. And it's kind of a shame because there should be more information, and there's getting to be more. There's more people like Charles Bonnet, who did a lot of research down in Upper Nubia near Kerma. So there's more and more there, but the word should be out much more about ancient Nubia. The word should be out. I mean, the evidence is there, the archaeology is there, and there's more that can be studied, because there's a lot right now that's under the dam in Aswan that's just been flooded. There's a lot of stuff that's just under the dam that's been flooded, and things even farther south that have yet to be excavated. But there's more to know. But there's this distinct group of A group Nubians. They're there, the distinct group of A group Nubians that are there, and they are They are going forward. They are doing exactly what they need to be doing. They're people. They are not only doing that, they are moving forward, and they are having interactions with one another. They're doing all kinds of things there. And as I kind of move this and give us more feedback with it, they're doing all kinds of things with respect to that. So it becomes an important thing for us to be able to work with as we look at this and shoot up more about it, is not just that, but there are other things that happens with it. So the A group people are there. They're right there around where we see Ashwan, and they're actually inhabiting the southern part of what will become Kemet. So they're right there. They're inhabiting that area. You find grave sites there. You find interaction there. You find people there. And then you can go all the way down to what is the southern part of Lower Nubia. Getting right into it is the northern part of the Data Sudan. And that right there, you find things like the Custal, one of the famous Custal cemeteries, which is right there along the border of Sudan and ancient Kemet. Not only do you find that cemetery, you find famous artifacts like the Custal incense burner, and you find other interactions that's going place. So that's part of Lower Nubia, and you're talking about 3,800 to 3,100 BC. And so that's taking place there. But as you kind of move forward, there are other groups of people that'll move in. So it's not just the A group people. After a period of time, they believe around 3,100 BC that the A group people may have had an interaction or fights with the new kingdom that was developing in ancient Kemet, and they may have gotten pushed out of some of their areas or may have gotten killed. It's hard for me to believe that they killed everybody. Most likely they lost a fight, and they either blended in, those who were left over blended in, because very, very rarely, very few, especially in ancient times, very few wars killed every single person. You'd have to die from a lot of other things than just the war, usually. So more than likely they either died out to some of them, or they just blended in. So they may have lost a war, got killed, some of them had to move away, blended in with other people, or blended in right there in ancient Kemet, which is a good chance it would happen. And so you have a period of time where in Lower Nubia, Kemet is asserting its power in 3,100 BC. And so some of the A group kind of is not going to be as powerful, kind of shrinks back a little bit. But all during this time, while this is still going on, you still have Kerma. You still have Lower Nubia and Upper Nubia. You have still the part that's right here around the Third Cataract, right there around what we call Kerma, where you see the word Kerma right there by Upper Nubia. That is an area and a place where they have pre-Kemetic societies, pre-Kemetic interaction, economic area where they're trading in gold, they're trading in all types of things. That's taking place in the area around the Third Cataract of the Nile. You can see the right beneath where the A group is. That's taking place there right around the Third Cataract of the Nile. So you have that there even around this 3,500 BC, 3,000 BC. That's going on there in Kerma. And then you begin to have other people move in. Over a period of time, over the centuries, other people move in. So I want to kind of give you some names of that. So right there where you see the A group people looking at right there, you start to see a group called the C group come in. And the C group, they're made up of a number of different people. It's not just the C group. Obviously, they didn't call themselves a C group. You can actually go back and look and read Kemetic documents. And one of them I'll recommend, and I've talked about that, and we'll talk about it again, is the autobiography of Winnie. And the autobiography of Winnie, he was a person in Upper Kemet, in the southern part of Kemet there, who was advisor. He was an official, and he was called upon to take an army to fight people in the north, right? He was going to go fight some people in the north. He was called upon to take an army, and he took a whole lot of Nubian people with him, and they name them, right? So they say the Irjet Nubians, the Cow Nubians, the Wawat Nubians, the Medjay Nubians, the Yam Nubians. He names a whole slew of Nubian people who are of this area in what we call Lower Nubia, who were probably a part of what archaeologists call the C group, right? They were probably a part of that C group. And they're by 2,500 BC, they're in this area that is Lower Nubia. They're right there, and they are serving in the armies of ancient Kemet. They are trading. They have access to gold, just like other people have access to gold. And when you go farther down in Kerma, you have people who are the forerunners of the kingdom of Kush, the empire of Kush. These are the forerunners of the empire of Kush. They're there 3,000 years before Christ, they're 3,500 years before Christ, and they're there 2,500 years before Christ, really, really asserting themselves. And so you find that this whole area is teeming with life. When you say Nubia, it's not just one group of people. There's another group of people to mention as we kind of go farther east over here, the Medjay. They're also a group of people. So you do not just have one type of person here in ancient Kemet and ancient Nubia when we just say Nubians. And when somebody says, the ancient Kemetic people did this with Nubia, say who? Which Nubians, right? Because they named them. They were very specific. They were very specific. A lot of these things you read, they will tell you who they're talking to, and they had distinctions. And there's no way every single Nubian person from from the upper part of Kemet, we're in the southern part, to lower Nubia, to the southern part of Nubia, or even farther east. There's no way every single Nubian person that was interacting with ancient Kemet was interacting in the same way. There were different times and different things being done at different times. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'll be interested to see what your comments were. If you have any comments, please put them down below. But I wanted to kind of share that and give you information. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you.